right. Hello and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Eke, and I am so excited to welcome my special guest today. Her name is Smriti Shrestha. She's a student, she's a poet, she's a writer, and she's a friend of mine. So thank you so much. Welcome to the podcast, Smriti. How are you? How are you doing today?
Thank you. I am really good. And yeah, since it's like Saturday, it has been such a slow day, and I've just been doing nothing in particular, just scrolling around the news feed and just doing nothing in particular and enjoying and relaxing my time. Yeah. How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for asking. It's Saturday. I feel like, Saturdays are just days for laziness, honestly. I feel like I feel better on Saturdays when I do nothing. You know what I mean? Just scrolling a little bit, chilling all day, eating good food,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I did that. I ate good food. Like, I love cooking, so I did that too.
Hey, I'm happy to hear. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do for a living right now. Just tell the audience a little bit
Mhm.
about who you are and everything.
Okay. So I am from Nepal, but currently I'm in Minnesota, USA. I just came here back. I think it was in August 2021 that I came here, and I'm a student, so I do not do anything. I study for my living, to be honest, but I work as a graduate assistant in the social work department. That is my major as well. So I am doing my master's in social work. So yeah, I think that is pretty much about me. And I'm trying
Absolutely.
to get yeah, and I'm trying to get back to writing because I've not been able to write much recently. So I think I should think of that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's interesting kind of how we met. If you remember how we met, it was like she said, Smriti, she's from Nepal. So we
Mhm.
actually met in Kathmandu, Nepal, and I was just doing a mini tour there. I was the first time I'd ever been to Southeast Asia. And I did this thing with this group called Word Warriors. And basically, for the time being, I held some workshop. She was actually one of the workshop participants, and she blew me away with her spoken word poem. I believe the class, what was the workshop called? Spoken word poetry from the stage to rap, from the page to the stage. And that was just
Mhm.
one of the Poet Speaks workshops I was doing. Do you remember that when we met in that workshop? Do you have any recollection of that?
Yeah, I mean, I clearly remember that particular incident and the workshop, but I do not remember much about what happened in the workshop. But I remembered that you performed your poetry, and I was very much inspired by that particular instance. I remember, and I also like have a very vibrant memory of it because that was the time I was busy. In my undergrad, I was doing things. I was networking around and meeting new people,
Yeah.
which is why I think I was able to remember that particular workshop. And I also met like good friends there, like poet friends who were doing poetry and stuff. And these were the people, like, even after that session, they were inviting me over, can you do like poetry for us and stuff. And I was like, okay, that was like a good connection that I'd built with people. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I remember one particular incident very much. You showed us a video about, something regarding bullying or something. I'm not sure exactly, but that is something that I remember. I do not know why, but, that made an impact on me. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. No, that's crazy. Yeah, that workshop, I remember it was in Kathmandu, Nepal. That was which is a big city center of Nepal. That was about in 2019, I believe. So about 2 years ago is when that took place. No, it's great. I'm so amazed in that. I'm really happy to hear that made a networking experience for you to now connect with other poets in Nepal. Yeah, no, that's
Mhm.
amazing. How did you, so in terms of kind of just the writing style, what would you say your writing style is, and like how did you come into writing poetry?
Mhm. Um, I do not think I have a particular style when it comes to writing because I do not want to limit myself to a particular style of writing, to be very honest. And I think writing is something that comes naturally to me. It is something that I do not have to make an effort, or something that I do not have to, I just be like, okay, I need to write. It never like occurs like that. It's just I'm not doing anything, and the next moment I'm writing. So that is how it comes to me. It's very natural. And writing poetry, I remember when I was in like grade 9, maybe. Yes, when I was in grade 9. So I used to write poems in Nepali as well. That is my
Mm,
mother tongue language. And
yeah.
um, my teacher, my Nepali teacher, he said that, "Oh, you're such a Smriti. You are Asukavi." He said that. So Asukavi is a Nepali word, and I didn't know what that meant. And I asked him, "What does Asukavi mean?" And he said that it means someone who can like write poems instantly. And I was like, okay. And that incident really made me feel like, okay, maybe I can write poems. And I started writing more of it, because when someone tells you you can do things, it adds up to your um confidence. And that really helped me, or like made me feel like I can write.
Mm.
And I never stopped writing. I just kept on going with it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really amazing. Wow. Okay. So you've kind of had a natural gift for it. I'm curious now because you said you wrote in Nepali, and like I'm really big on just this idea of like culture and place, how it affects us so much in our writing. Tell me a little bit about talk a little bit more about that. And like you said, you network with a lot of poets there in Nepal. What is the spoken word poetry scene like in Nepal? I know it's a big country and there's so many different cities, all communities. What could you give us like a
Mhm.
brief, what is it like in Nepal in terms of the spoken word poetry community out there?
Mm-hmm. So yes, I think spoken word poetry is gaining much more popularity in Nepal these days, especially like youth like us who are into poetry and stuff. It's gaining so much popularity, and there are events, and there are open mic nights where we can just go and perform. Or if you are just performing, um, I don't know, if you're performing many times and you're just going places, people see you and they invite you over to just like perform as guest performers and stuff. So it has been gaining popularity, and I think it's really nice, because that is when we realize the power of art. And
Mm,
Nepal is like, there are so many different activism going on. There are different, movements and political scenario going on. So people write about it in the form of art, people write about it in the form of poetry. And I
yeah.
think that really makes an impact, because even when I read this book, Azadi, by Arundhati Roy, she is an amazing writer, I must say. And I'd not written any poetry during the lockdown, but when I read her book, that is about freedom. So Azadi means freedom in Hindi. And um, after I read her book, I wrote a poem, Azadi, because that book really made an impact on me so much. And I performed it because that was, I don't know, maybe coincidentally, or I don't know, like one of my friends, like she invited me over to perform as a guest. Uh, for the poetry, and I went there and I performed that performance, and I felt so powerful, because I was like, every time you go and perform, you just like have this, your legs like it starts shaking, and your hands that tremble and stuff. But at that time, I told myself that I would not feel any of those emotions, and I performed it. It felt really powerful, because I was talking about something that really was close to my heart. So,
Yeah.
connected in so many different ways, I guess.
Absolutely. No, I think that's very powerful reading that book. Like you said, that Nepali word translates to freedom. And
And
that's kind
Hindi word. Azadi is a
ah,
Hindi word.
mm,
And that is like freedom in Hindi.
got you, got you. No, that's such an amazing kind of connection. I'm curious too, like in terms of do you mix that kind of that oral tradition of Nepali as well as like you said, the language of Hindi? How do you mix that with your spoken word and your poetry? How do you infuse the two?
Mhm. So I think I've tried mixing languages when I do spoken word poetry, because I don't know, it just feels so good doing that. I'm not sure if it sounds really good to people, because some they like it and some they do not
Yeah.
prefer it that way. But I have performed my poetries where I've like done spoken word poetry both in English and Nepali together. So I think that makes it more. I do not know. I think that makes it more creative, maybe,
Mm.
rather than just like doing the poetry in one particular language. So yeah, I've done it and I think it's really nice, but I know people who do not prefer it that way as well.
For sure. No, for sure. I think it creates such a powerful mix, honestly, when you're mixing the two kind of, because language truly is tradition, right? So
Mhm,
when you're able to mix, something like Nepal, Southeast Asian tradition and culture, again, mixing it with English, which is a language that sparses what
mhm,
like Europe to, you know what I mean? What those, where the roots of those languages are so vastly different. When you can kind of combine the two, I think it creates much more breadth in terms of your language that you're bringing to people. So tell me a
mhm,
little bit about, I'm curious, when you kind of perform, how do you get into the performer state? It's like I always say, like spoken word, well, people, it's like we make the job look easy. We make the job of writing, no, really, like we make the job of writing and performing look easy, but the amount of effort that it comes into it, that you got to really put into it to make it look
mhm,
whatever emotion, whether it be delicate, soft, or hard, aggressive, powerful. It's so much kind of in yourself that you really bring to the stage, especially performing in different cultural contexts, whether Nepal,
mhm.
United States, wherever in the world you're performing. Like you said, you have that shaky feeling in your leg before you perform, but how do you prepare for that? Giving to your audience, giving the audience your spoken word. How do you prepare for that to give it to your audience?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And when you were saying this, when you were asking me this question, one performance that came to my mind was when I did perform with my two other friends during Women's Day. So it was like a performance poetry, spoken word poetry related to women and women violence in Nepal.
Mm.
And um, every time before you go to the stage, it always like it gets nerve wracking. It does not feel really good, but I remind myself that this is what I need to convey to people. This is what I'm here to tell. This is the story that I'm here to tell, and I just cannot not tell it in the most perfect way that I can. That is what I remind myself. And I go to the stage, and once you're on the stage, nothing really matters. It's just the poetry, it's just the story that you're telling, and it's you and your emotions, like letting your emotions out so that people can know what you're trying to convey in the best possible way. And just being natural in whatever you do.
Mm.
And when it comes to writing, um, like I said, writing is not something that I've ever, felt that I needed to put an effort on it, because I am someone who writes and never even like edits my writing. I do
Mm.
not do that. So it's more like an emotion. It's more like a feeling that I try to convey to people. So it's not that difficult, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's yeah, the ultimate goal of writing really is to give someone an emotion, right? Is
Mhm.
really, that's why our work is like spoken word poets, you know what I mean? Our work as writers, our work as giving oral tradition to people. It definitely is giving people an emotion and creating new ones, right?
Mhm.
Creating new ones as people listen to our words, painting pictures, hearing sounds, hearing symphonies with our words, right? Hearing symphonies with our words. You know what I mean? That's the mark, I think, of a really great storyteller, which is ultimately what we are. So I have a question for you. How do you connect? Because I think it's, the fact that you're Nepali, mixing that language in with your spoken word and poetry. I think you connect with such a unique audience, but it's such a broad audience too, you know what I mean? Because like you said, you did that poem on Women's Day. Obviously, so many people can relate to that day, wherever, no matter where you're on the spectrum. how do you think people, how do you make people connect with your writing?
Hmm, that's an interesting question. Um, Especially like when you're writing for these events that you go through, for instance, like Women's Day and all, you write about what's happening. You write about the current event. You write about things that people should know about, people should talk about, but we do not. So when
Yeah.
you are writing these kind of thing, then it really makes an impact. At least like it makes people think. Not, I think making people think is a bigger impact in itself, right?
Mm,
So just writing and doing the performance in a way that people can relate to, and people can question themselves why they've not been giving this particular situation thought, why they've been ignoring the situation, what they can do about it. So I
mm,
think about, reiterating the fact that there are situations in societies, there are instances in societies that one should give attention to, that one should prioritize.
mm-hmm.
I think that is important.
Yeah. No, I think this idea of giving people, relating
Mhm.
to people through just full blown observation, right? Of what is happening in society. What is your specific unique viewpoint, right? That's where you're writing from, and people can relate to that or they cannot, right? So I think,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I agree with you. That's a complete way to kind of connect, your writing to other people. But it's like, I guess for you, when you're writing, right, and you're trying to make that connection, what barriers do you feel you face, or do you feel like you face any barriers when trying to write and connect with people?
Okay, so when you said that people can relate and people might not relate as well, I think that triggered one incident, like one of the
Oh,
performances that I did.
yeah.
So it was the event that my university had organized, and we were performing something related to feminism,
Mm,
about women's rights and feminism, feminist issues and stuff. And one guy, I remember, he shouted from the audience. He was in the audience and he shouted, I do not know, but something really bad,
yeah.
just disregarding the entire poetry that we're doing on feminism or feminism in itself.
Mm,
And I think that is when it becomes triggering and when people cannot relate to what you're trying to convey.
mm,
So that would be definitely a barrier when people do not try to understand what you're, trying to convey to them. I think that becomes a barrier. I do not know why, how that happens. Maybe it's because of the perspective. Maybe
mm.
it's because people are in denial. They do not want to understand what we're talking about. Or maybe we are like, falling short to make them understand what, we're talking about.
Yeah.
But still, when you said that people cannot relate, I think, we're performing, and that particular guy, he was shouting from the back like feminists are this, feminists are that, and it didn't make sense at all to us.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely terrible. I mean, like, and I can relate. Yeah, when you're doing performances maybe on certain topics, people, it can bring out the worst in people sometimes, especially when it comes to just performing poetry. Because already
Mhm.
so many people have, I think, views on poetry. What's the comment? It's boring. Oh, writing's boring. Spoken word. What can you get out of that? But it's such a rich history. But yeah, no, during a performance and having people kind of, make very antagonistic comments against what you're saying. Like you said, completely dismissing the content of what you're saying. That is a
Mhm.
huge barrier. Absolutely. That's a huge barrier. It's also like, it's deafening to your poetic spirit, man. Like it's hard to keep going, right? Because you're having someone completely go against your, antagonizing you as you're trying to perform on stage. So tell us, how did you kind of combat that as you're performing and someone's making these very abhorrent comments towards you as you're performing? How did you combat that? How did you kind of get back up again and just keep going? Or did
Just yeah, please.
or no, or did you even say anything, or did you just keep on going? What did you do? What was kind of the response?
We kept on going, we didn't say anything. But
Yeah.
after that particular incident, I think I did learn something, and that is to make my performance more energetic, more
Mm,
powerful. And just like, you know how when we are performing poetry, our voice, it plays such a big role. So just like
Yeah.
controlling our voice in such a way that it sounds powerful when
Mm.
people are listening, so that they do not even feel like, or they do not even have this, I know audacity is a big word, but they do not have this audacity to,
Yeah.
as a barrier when we are like performing. It's of course
Yeah.
their right to say whatever they want to say, that's there. But when someone is performing, I don't think that's just like basic human manner, right? I mean.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. No, I like that because it's taking your power. You know what I mean? Taking your power, like, because when you are on the stage, like literally, like you own the stage, right? Like everyone's there to see you perform. So it's absolutely
Mhm.
like reclaiming every part of yourself, like reaching to every fiber of your being, like this is my space to speak my history, my truth, my story, my narrative. No, I like that a lot for sure. So that kind of goes into this kind of next thing. What do you think people can truly take away from spoken word? You know, the title of the podcast is The Poet Speaks. What do you
Mhm.
think people can take away from spoken word? You know, what is the ultimate goal? This oral tradition. What can people take away from spoken word in your opinion?
Mhm. So, in my opinion, I think spoken word is an art, right? We all agree to that. Um, so, art is something that I cannot say, you can take this from art, you cannot take this from art. So, people, they take away whatever they can relate to. I think that is really important. And they question whatever they cannot relate to. They also try to challenge whatever they do not understand, which I think are the takeaways when it comes to like spoken word poetry. And I think that is really important, because if you're just listening it for the sake of listening it and um, entertainment, it's just going to be limited to that particular thing. It has
Mm,
to be, performed, or it has to be conveyed in such a manner that entices people to question, to challenge, and to, just relate to them in the most powerful way possible, I guess. Because that is when you know that you have made an impact. And I do not mean to say that every spoken poetry that you do needs to make an, like impact, be it bigger or smaller. But if it does, then I think that's great, because
mm.
at least they're doing something, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that and what spoken word means to you. So to wrap up, I mean, tell us what is good for Smriti in the 2021, 2022 and beyond. Where are you looking at taking your writing at this point? I know you're jumping back on that horse, and like I know so many people are jumping back on that horse for writing. Where you think 2021, 2022 and beyond for you as a poet? Where do you think that's taking you?
So I would not distinguish myself, poet, writer, sing, because I just like to be labeled as writer, because I think that makes more sense to me. That is something that I can relate to. And so yeah, I'm trying to get back into writing, because it has been a while that I've not been able to write things,
Mm,
and every time I feel heavy, and every time, emotions are, I don't know, they play a toll on me, I just go back to writing, because writing is a very safe space, and I can just write about anything that I want to. So I'm hoping that, I will be able to write more. And I really want to center myself to writing, because I know that this is what I am meant to do. This is what is something that comes naturally to me, and I should not let go of this particular thing. This is very close to my heart, and I know and I understand that there have been times that writing has helped me heal in so many other ways, that not every, like not anything else has been able to help me in that particular way. So yeah, just trying to get back into the space, this comfort that would.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey, you know what? I think that's such a great plan and goal for the next year coming up, looking at writing as healing, you know,
Mhm.
finding more ways to write better, be better, and using your writing as a tool to heal yourself. And in that sense, you're teaching so many people, right? So I'd like to thank you so much, Smriti, for being our guest today on the Spoken Word podcast called The Poet Speaks. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We'll include Smriti's socials on the episode description. Any last words for you before we end this episode?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Amanda. I feel really happy and I feel good that I can share my story with you, especially like with I didn't even realize that I had so many performances that I could like talk about. So thank you for allowing me. I think I was able to reflect back on those performances. So thank you, truly in gratitude. And I hope like I will be able to hear more stories coming around from all over the world. And good luck with this podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. All right, everyone, this is the Poet Speaks podcast, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.